Everyone thinks they know who the real villain of Battlefield 6 is, but in reality, they're dead wrong. The real villain of Battlefield 6 is someone we didn't expect, and it changes everything we thought we knew about Battlefield 6. Now, the Battlefield 6 campaign focuses on a war between America and the remaining countries of NATO versus the private military company Pax Armada and a coalition of former NATO members in Europe. Now, these former NATO members left because the Secretary General of NATO was assassinated, and NATO's reaction was to do nothing. In response, all of these European countries realized that NATO wasn't really going to help them if anything ever happened, especially with the big Russian bear right next door. So instead, they invested all their money into a private military company based out of Tajikistan called Pax Armada. Now, Pax Armada is led by a man named Alexander Quincaid. He's the bad guy and the kind of main antagonist for the campaign. He's not the true villain, however, but he is a great bad guy. I mean, his backstory is fantastic. He used to work for the CIA and NATO alongside Has Carter, the leader of Dagger 1-3 and the Marine unit you actually play as in the campaign. Apparently, these two soldiers were very close. They were comrades, they were teammates, and when a mission went sideways that they were assigned to complete, a burning building collapsed on Alexander Quincaid. In the wreckage and in the rubble, Has Carter tried to pick up the burning wreckage off of him to save him, but ultimately decided that he had to leave Alexander Quincaid to burn to death so he could complete the mission. A fact further confirmed by the burn marks on Alexander Quincaid's face and Has Carter's hands. But Alexander Quincaid took this very personally. His friend and ally didn't save him from a burning building. And somehow he escaped or was rescued, and instead, presumed dead, he went to work for Pax Armada. But he wasn't really going to work for them. He was personally recruited by the leader and owner of Pax Armada to command all their military forces around the world. Both Alexander Quincaid and the true villain of Battlefield 6 had both been burned by the CIA, burned by America, and burned by NATO. Betrayed fighting for the principles that they loved, they realized that true change would only come if they themselves made it. So Alexander Quincaid was personally recruited by the true villain of Battlefield 6, Henry Blackburn. Now, Henry Blackburn was the hero of Battlefield 3. A lot of people should recognize that name, but just in case you don't, here's a quick summary of Battlefield 3. In Battlefield 3, Henry Blackburn, the main character of the game, the hero character who you play as, is sent basically on a global chase to hunt down a rogue CIA asset named Solomon, who has 2 miniature and portable nukes that he stole from Russia and is trying to set off in Paris and New York. The game's kind of climax moment came when Blackburn assaults a villa by a Russian arms dealer who had supplied Solomon with the nukes in the first place. But as they assault the villa, they realize that they're not the only people assaulting the villa. A Russian special forces team is also on the other side trying to get to the villa first, and it starts a race against the clock for Henry Blackburn to go find the Russian arms dealer first. And as he finally discovers the Russian arms dealer, he realizes he was a second just too late. And then he is held at gunpoint by the Russian soldier named Dima. Now, Dima in this moment doesn't act like a typical Russian soldier. He makes a deal with Henry Blackburn to not be soldiers, to not be nationalists of their country, to not work on old alliances, but as 2 men hoping to stop a global tragedy. Dima reveals all the information he knows about the nukes and the plans to detonate them by Solomon and makes a deal with Blackburn. Blackburn will go back to New York and stop Solomon from detonating the nukes there, and Dima will go to Paris and stop Solomon from detonating the nukes in Paris. And at the exact moment as they're making this deal as 2 men working together for the common good, Henry Blackburn's commanding officer comes in the room, holding Dima at gunpoint. Threatening to arrest him or kill him, Henry Blackburn shoots his commanding officer. As a result, Henry Blackburn is sent back to New York to be interrogated by the CIA about why he shot his commanding officer and what he knows about these nuclear weapons the CIA doesn't think exist at all. And while Blackburn is being interrogated by the CIA, Dima is hunting down the nuclear bomb in Paris, only to find out that the bomb that he was hunting was a decoy, just as the real nuke blows up, killing 80,000 people in Paris and giving Dima radiation poisoning. So following this news, Henry Blackburn breaks out of the CIA facility and hunts down Solomon through subway cars, beats him to death with a brick, and stops the nuke from going off. But he still killed his commanding officer. And following the events of the Battlefield 3 campaign, Henry Blackburn is dishonorably discharged from the military for killing his commanding officer, but faces no corporal punishment or jail time because he did technically save New York from a nuclear bomb. They just tell him, "You're not part of the military, go figure out your stuff." And so he does. He starts a corporation under the control of the Russian government to build advanced technological weapons for Russia and to be used against the United States, who just turned their back on their biggest hero. And as the next couple years progress, he's working on this technological advancements in Siberia when the War of 2020 in Battlefield 4 breaks out. Now, to skip over the events of Battlefield 4, China, Russia, and America get into a three-way war. At the very end, China gives up and surrenders to America. America, though, is still fighting Russia, and they head to Siberia to destroy the advanced weapon facilities and stop Henry Blackburn, not knowing that he's really running the facilities. And after they do so, Henry Blackburn has to kind of figure out what's going on. He has a giant pile of money and nothing to do. So instead, he forms a private military company. And it's very important to note that in Battlefield 2042, he is still around, and we are given this direct quote about Henry Blackburn in the years that follow the events of Battlefield 4. The disgraced soldier responded the only way his training would allow. He adapted. As the world's militaries grew even more dependent on private military companies, Blackburn seized an opportunity to start his own venture. Wary of undue attention, Blackburn operated from the shadows to recruit and build a formidable fighting force for hire. And by the 2020s, he secretly headed one of the most powerful PMCs in the world. Now, that lines up with a lot of things. After the War of 2020, Russia and China aren't really world superpowers anymore, and they're just trying to survive and get by. A lot of these other countries in NATO are kind of lenient to help out because America, Russia, and China just went into a war with each other and left NATO out to dry while this happened. On top of the fact that America and Russia knew about a nuclear device in Paris and never told anyone in Europe about what was going on. So at this point, a lot of these European countries are kind of pissed. They leave NATO entirely and form their own coalition. And during this time, they begin to recruit and spend money on a private military organization to act as their military in their coalition's defense, allowing their citizens to go sign up to be mercenaries for the PMC and act in a defensive capability. But that's not just enough. Pax Armada wants to shift the world order, so they begin attacking NATO and America and starting a full-on invasion on the east and west coast against America. So all the while, Henry Blackburn is secretly investing all of his money and his resources into this group called Pax Armada, secretly funding them and taking the profits and putting it in a stockpile. While he is secretly running what's going on, he chose Alexander Quincaid to be the figurehead and commander of the Pax Armada military. That way he could stay hidden in the shadows without anyone knowing he was secretly pulling the strings. And what we know from the Battlefield 6 campaign, as with most campaigns in video games for first-person shooters, you kill the bad guy at the end of the campaign. But the multiplayer reveals for Season 1 have already confirmed the war isn't over after Alexander Quincaid dies. But Henry Blackburn is still around and still commanding and leading Pax Armada in their global interest. So tell me in the comments down below what you think, and until next time, I am IceBurgz. Stay frosty.